I just knew that my value to this franchise was bigger than what had been offered. And so I just need, for me,
Before becoming the queen of horror films for a generation of viewers, before the ghost face mask appeared and turned her into a pop culture icon, Neve Campbell was just a Canadian girl with a completely different dream. Born on October 3rd, 1973, in Guelph, Ontario, Neve grew up in a family where art seemed to run in everyone's blood. Her father was a drama teacher, her mother a psychologist and yoga instructor, and both sides of the family had a history connected to the stage. However, what attracted Neve as a child wasn't acting, but ballet. At the age of 6, after watching a performance of The Nutcracker, she immediately knew what she wanted to do with her life. From then on, almost all of Neve's childhood was spent in long hours of practice, ballet shoes, and cold rehearsal rooms. Her talent was quickly recognized when, at just 9 years old, she was accepted into the National Ballet School of Canada, one of the most prestigious ballet academies in the world. For many children, it was a dream. But for Neve, that dream gradually became a harsh challenge.
The years that followed were a series of physical injuries. Broken toes, strained ligaments, tendinitis, and countless other injuries began to accumulate. But the most painful thing wasn't the physical pain, but the tremendous mental pressure that the fiercely competitive environment brought. By her teenage years, she realized the joy that had once made her love ballet had disappeared. At 14, after a period she would later call a mental breakdown, Neve decided to give up the dream she had pursued almost her entire childhood. It was a painful decision, but also the most important turning point in her life. Leaving ballet school, Neve returned home and began searching for a new path. Fortunately, her love for the stage remained intact.
At age 15, she auditioned for The Phantom of the Opera in Toronto and was unexpectedly selected to join the troupe. Over the following years, Neve appeared in over 800 performances, learning discipline, perseverance, and the ability to perform in front of an audience night after night. It was here that a talented manager noticed her. Her first acting opportunities began to appear. Small commercials and lesser-known television roles gradually helped her gain experience. Then, in the early 1990s, after appearing in the series Catwalk, Neve understood that if she wanted to go further, she had to leave Canada. In 1993, at age 20, she flew to Los Angeles alone with very little guarantee for her future. It was a risky decision for a young woman without connections in Hollywood, but that very trip led her to an audition for a new television series called Party of Five. Neve couldn't have known that the role of Julia Salinger would change her life forever and open the next chapter of a journey even bigger than any dream she had when she stood in the dance studio years ago. If the first part of the story was the journey of a young girl who had to give up her ballet dreams to find a new path, then the next part is the moment Neve Campbell stepped into the spotlight and became a face known worldwide. In the mid-1990s, when Party of Five was gradually finding its place on American television, Neve was still considered a promising young actress. She worked almost year-round with a packed filming schedule, but few could have imagined that within just a few months, her life would completely change. 1996 unfolded like a whirlwind. First came The Craft, a film about 4 teenage girls drawn into a world of witches and supernatural forces. Although not expected to be a blockbuster, the film unexpectedly became a huge hit with young audiences. Neve not only proved she could take on leading roles on the big screen, but also showed she possessed a special charm in stories with a mysterious and suspenseful feel. However, The Craft was just the beginning of something much bigger. Later that year, director Wes Craven was preparing to release a new horror project called Scream. At that time, the slasher genre had almost run out of ideas. Audiences thought they had seen enough masked killers and girls who just ran away in fear. But Scream changed everything. The film was both a genuine horror film and a clever satire of the genre's own rules. At the heart of the story is Sidney Prescott, a high school girl who becomes the target of the killer Ghostface. And it was Neve Campbell who made Sidney one of the most memorable female characters in horror film history. What made Sidney different wasn't that she was stronger or luckier than the other characters. It was that she refused to be a victim. While many female horror film protagonists of that era were often portrayed as mere panickers and fleers, Neve's Sidney thought, resisted, and fought to the end. Audiences saw in her intelligence, courage, and deeply human vulnerability. This is what resonated with millions. Scream quickly became a global phenomenon. With a budget of only about $15 million, it grossed over $170 million worldwide, saving a declining genre. More importantly, it turned Neve Campbell into an international star overnight. She was only 23 years old at the time. Interviews, magazine covers, and media attention were everywhere. But most remarkably, amidst this storm of fame, Neve continued filming Party of Five almost year-round and maintained consistent performance on both television and film. Her success continued with Scream 2 in 1997 and Scream 3 in 2000. She appeared on the cover of Time magazine and was considered one of Hollywood's most promising young faces. At the same time, Neve actively sought out different roles, such as in Wild Things, to break free from the good girl image the public had assigned her. By the age of 26, she had achieved something many actors dream of their whole lives: an iconic character deeply connected to popular culture. But precisely at the height of her career, Neve Campbell began to consider a completely different path. Following the resounding success of Scream and the conclusion of Party of Five in 2000, many believed Neve Campbell would continue down the familiar Hollywood path, taking on bigger commercial roles, appearing on magazine covers, and capitalizing on her fame. But precisely when her career seemed to be at its most secure, Neve began to feel dissatisfied. After years of consistently appearing on television and in films, she didn't want to be seen as the horror queen or the girl always running away from Ghostface. What Neve was looking for were roles with more depth, projects that would allow her to prove herself a true actress, not just a young star famous thanks to a movie franchise. Therefore, the early 2000s saw a rather unexpected decision. Instead of rushing into blockbuster films, she chose smaller, less flashy, but more creatively valuable art projects. Neve both produced and starred in the film Panic, and then went on to gain attention with When Will I Be Loved?, a critically acclaimed independent film. These films didn't bring in hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, but they earned her respect from those genuinely interested in acting. However, the most important project during this period was The Company in 2003. The film not only featured Neve, but also fulfilled a dream she had cherished since her teenage years. Set in the world of professional ballet, The Company allowed her to return to her early passion, which she had had to abandon due to injury. Neve was involved in developing the concept, co-producing and starring in the film, making it the most personal project of her career. The artistic success of The Company led many to believe it would be the beginning of a new chapter, but reality proved different. Hollywood continued to offer her familiar and less challenging roles. The feeling of being trapped became increasingly apparent. The promotional events, the excessive media attention, the obsessive fan letters, and the pressure of fame that had lasted for years began to wear Neve down. And then, while most stars were striving to get closer to the heart of Hollywood, Neve Campbell was preparing to make a decision that would surprise the entire industry: to leave it all behind and seek a more peaceful life across the Atlantic.
From 2011 onwards, Neve Campbell entered a career phase that many considered post-peak, but in reality, it opened up a completely different journey. The journey of a woman who refused to stand still or compromise. Her return in Scream 4 was not just a nostalgic comeback, but also an affirmation that the character of Sidney Prescott remains the spiritual heart of the entire series. After that, Neve continued to expand her acting range, appearing in diverse television and film projects such as House of Cards, where she showed a more mature, colder, and more psychologically profound image than the horror roles that made her famous. Not stopping there, she also participated in commercial film projects such as Skyscraper and The Lincoln Lawyer, proving that she is not confined to a single genre or icon. But the real turning point came in 2022, when she refused to return for Scream 6 because her compensation didn't match the value she brought to the franchise. This decision wasn't an emotional reaction, but a clear statement about inequality in the film industry. A wave of debate immediately erupted, and instead of criticism, a large portion of fans sided with her, seeing it as a necessary action to change how Hollywood treats female stars. That pressure and public outcry led to a crucial change. When the Scream 7 project was underway, Neve returned with significantly higher compensation, marking a victory not only personally, but also in principle. The film then became a huge success in 2026, confirming that her value had never diminished, only been underestimated at a certain point in time. Beyond the screen, she also dedicates time to charitable activities, particularly supporting those with Tourette's syndrome and epilepsy, and participates in the production of documentaries about ballet, an art form associated with discipline and delicate emotions. Despite returning to Hollywood in various ways, she has maintained her guiding principle. Family always comes first, not fame. In 2026, at age 52, Neve Campbell will be remembered not only as Sidney Prescott, but also as an icon of resilience. This is not simply the story of a star's downfall or comeback. It is the story of a woman who always made her own decisions about her life, even if it meant leaving Hollywood or saying no to a multi-million-dollar franchise.